Hi, and welcome back to the Red Zone Warriors Fantasy Football Show. I am Rob, the Commish Smith, here as always with my co-host, Jay Cushman Corsel. How's it going today, buddy?
Best day ever. 3-0 in fantasy this week. Highest score in every league that I'm in, including ours there, Commish. And the Lions won this week, so I guess I'd really just have to say, couldn't be better.
You did crush it this week, my friend. All right, everyone, don't forget to tweet us all your fantasy football questions at Red Zone Warriors. All right, Jay, let's get right at it. What's going on around the NFL that we need to know about?
Injuries everywhere. And we have a new starting quarterback in Jacksonville. Yes, this is the truth. The Jags have named Blake Bortles the starter. Look, they lost 34-17 and 41-10 in weeks 1 and 2. And they were down 30-0 at halftime in week 3 against the Colts. So they finally made the correct decision, the decision they should have made from the get-go, to bench Chad Henne, who sucks as bad as his alma mater does this year. By the way. And move to first-round pick Blake Bortles. Look, I went to the Lions Week 3 preseason game against Jacksonville, and I saw quite a bit of Blake Bortles, and let me tell you, he impressed me. He reminds me of Ben Roethlisberger. He's big, he's tall, he stands in the pocket tall, he throws the ball well, he's got good accuracy, seems like he's got good arm strength. He was 14-24 for 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Now, here's the deal. He's going to have the picks. You're going to get this from a rookie quarterback. But he's a lot better than Chad Henne, and if you're, in desperate need of some quarterback help in your league, or if you're in a 2-quarterback league and your second quarterback kind of sucks, maybe pick up Blake Bortles.
Well, Jay, and doing that in only one half of play in your first NFL quasi start, not even being able to practice all week as the starter, I'd say that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, like I said, the guy impressed me. I think he's going to have a good year. For being a rookie coming in, partway through the season, I think he's gonna impress some people, and he'll be higher on draft lists next year than I think a lot of people would think. So moving on, Rod Streeter has a fractured foot, the Raiders believe. Really, I'll be honest with you, Rod Streeter, not much fantasy impact here, unless you're in a really, really deep league. But it does, boost the other receivers on the Raiders a little bit. James Jones, Demarius Moore. So, yeah, if you have Rod Streeter, I'm sorry, but most likely you don't because nobody has him. Now, somebody that people do have is Kyle Rudolph, and Kyle Rudolph has injured his groin. Yeah, I know. I was high on this guy.
You got him in 3 leagues, man. You're killing me, Rudolph. You're killing me.
Hopefully he can come back. He said he's been battling it for a while, and the next guy on the depth chart is a guy named Rhett Ellison. So meaning look elsewhere if you have Rudolph and you need to backfill him because Rhett will be a pickup that you will regret.
That sounds like the name of some sort of Hollywood couple would name their kid.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so another guy that a lot of people were high on preseason and are going to be hurting because of is Dennis Pitta. He was carted off the field after suffering a potential season-ending hip injury to the same hip that was injured before. He wasn't even touched. He has already underwent surgery and is gone for the season. Owen Daniels will take over the team's top tight end targets. If you feel comfortable with Owen Daniels, I personally probably would. If I had Pitta or Kyle Rudolph for that matter, I would probably be going after somebody like Owen Daniels. But again, he missed time in camp with what the team labeled as fatigued legs.
Yeah, that means he's old. Translation, he's old.
Yes. So don't look for him to get used a whole ton. But when he is used, I mean, the guy can catch the ball, and he is a good red zone target, so we'll see what happens there. Matt Castle has several fractured bones in his foot, and he is done for a while, and Teddy Bridgewater will start for the foreseeable future. Hopefully, fantasy gods willing, this will boost Cordell Patterson and Greg Jennings, who I have both of these guys. I would love, not in the same league, mind you, in different leagues, but I do have both of them. I would love to see them get a boost in the rankings and be able to catch more balls. So, Mr. Bridgewater, do us all a favor, throw the ball to your receivers.
Get her done.
Yes, now the Chargers have put Danny Woodhead on IR with a fractured fibula. They were already without Ryan Matthews on Sunday against the Bills, and now they have to survive without Danny Woodhead for the entire season. So, not good. Donald Brown is the guy that will be taking all of the carries there. He's not a bad running back. He's not a world beater. Need running back help? Donald Brown is your man. Rob?
Yeah, and I will say he had 38 touches. Yes, 38 touches last week. Granted, he didn't do a ton with them, but he's going to get the volume, so there is worse options out there. All right, Jay, well, let's go ahead and get right into the hot waiver wire pickups for the week. So we're going to start, as always, at the quarterback position. And how could we not talk about one Mr. Kirk Cousins? We mentioned him last week when RG3 went down with that crazy dislocated ankle. And, well, Kurt filled in well in that game, and he came out in the next game as the starter. And, Jay, all he did was complete 30 of 48 passes for 427 yards and 3 TDs, only 1 interceptions in the Redskins' 37-34 loss to the Eagles.
Wait, timeout. Timeout here. He did all of that, and the Redskins still lost.
Indeed they did. It was a barn burner.
Time to change your name. Karma's a bitch.
Evidently it is. What was nice to see, though, he did get Pierre Garçon going. Deshaun Jackson, of course, wasn't going to be held out of this one going against his old team. Each had more than 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. Garçon was targeted, I believe, 16 times in this one.
That's my dog.
Yeah, Cousins may very well be a better fit for this offense than RG3, and if last week's game was any judgment call of that, cheers to you, good sir. And here's to more of that in the future. They actually have a pretty good schedule moving forward. You know, the Giants, pretty decent matchup. Then after that, it kind of goes downhill. They play the Seahawks and the Cardinals. But if you're hurting at the quarterback position, need someone to fill in or need a really solid backup, Kirk Cousins is clearly your man.
Yeah, imagine that. Kirk Cousins is a better fit for an offense than RG3. Not a surprise to me, but I do live in Michigan, and I saw what the guy did in our state, or Michigan State. Anyway, moving on, Geno Smith. You know, look, Geno could be good for your team as a bye-week fill-in. He won't have really an especially difficult matchup in late November. Geno Smith.
Until late November.
Oh, as he won't have an especially, not and. How's that? He won't have an especially difficult. Okay. Geno Smith, Jets quarterback. Another running quarterback, another injury risk. But he could be a very good fill-in for your team. The bye-week fill-in, as he won't have an especially difficult matchup until late November at the earliest. He's got the Lions up next, then the Chargers, then the Broncos. So all teams that can put up offensive points, which means Geno's going to have to throw the ball a lot, possibly try to run in as many touchdowns as he possibly can, which means fantasy points for his owners. Not that I'm saying, mind you, that you should start Geno Smith over almost anybody else, but if you need a bye-week fill-in or have had injury issues, say RG3, and couldn't get Cousins, and you're desperate enough, Geno Smith might be just what you're looking for.
Yes, and speaking of someone else who might be who you're looking for, we just mentioned Teddy Bridgewater took over on Sunday with Matt Castle, thank God, going. I mean, no one to, put injury on anyone, but it was time for a change, and Matt Castle breaking his foot in like 17 different places made it available for Teddy to come in the game. So he made his NFL debut in New Orleans, and had a pretty good showing, actually, competing 12 of 20 pass attempts for 150 yards. No TDs, but yet no interceptions as well. He has a chance to take over this favorable schedule for the next 6 weeks, where the Vikings will face several weak passing defenses. Up next, the next three, Falcons, Packers, and Lions, all of which have a depleted secondary, so Teddy could make some noise there, not only with his arm, but as always, with his legs.
Absolutely. Hopefully they still lose to the Lions, but go Vikings the week you play the Packers. Next up, a guy we already touched on a little bit when we talked in the news and notes is Blake Bortles. He was Jacksonville's #1 pick. He made his debut in relief of a very, very ineffective Chad Henne on Sunday. He had sort of an uneven performance. You might expect that from a rookie. 14 and 24, 233. We mentioned earlier, 2 touchdowns and the 2 picks. He also ran twice for 30 yards. His rushing ability is definitely going to be needed to produce because he does not have very many good wide receivers there. Hopefully, the Jags can add some wide receiver depth this offseason and make him a viable fantasy quarterback going into next season. We're going to move on to the running backs now. That's it for the quarterbacks. So waiver wire running backs. Rob, you're going to start with the guy that's replacing the guy that replaced Ray Rice, possibly?
Yes, this would be Lorenzo Taliaferro. And I think I just nailed that name, by the way. He's going to be one of the hot pickups this week, in addition to Donald Brown, who you'll talk up here in a minute. But yeah, Bernard Pierce, of course, has been sidelined with a thigh injury. Lorenzo played well in this road win over the Browns. He rushed the ball for 18 times for 91 yards and a score. This big rookie's making his case, Jay, as being the best Ravens running back. Even when Pierce returns, he might have carved out himself a nice niche here to have a significant role, even if it isn't a committee. So he definitely could push for RB2 status. Would, of course, want to start him out in the flex position, kind of see how this goes moving forward. But he's definitely someone to take a look at this week on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Another guy to take a look at here is Donald Brown. Talked about him earlier. Look, Danny Woodhead, which, I play mostly in PPR leagues, actually all in PPR leagues, and he's a beast in PPR, but he has sustained a severe high ankle sprain, actually, not just a high ankle sprain, and a fractured fibula Sunday. He will miss the rest of the season. Ryan Matthews is expected to be out several more weeks with an MCL injury, and we all know Ryan Matthews is kind of like a China doll when he gets hurt. He kind of stays that way once it happens, so he may come back for a short period of time. So Donald Brown carried 31 times for 62 yards. He also caught 5 passes for 27 yards. It's obviously not ideal for this guy to handle this many touches, but they do have a guy named Brandon Oliver. He's a 5'6" undrafted rookie. They'll probably be giving him the ball. At 5'6", I'm guessing he's more of a receiving back, a little quick guy. That remains to be seen. Obviously an undrafted rookie. I don't know too much about him. But if you need running back help, Donald Brown is the guy to grab this week just on pure volume. He's going to get a lot of carries, have a lot of chances to produce some fantasy points for his owners.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, geez, they're having to go to their 4th running back who's a rookie. Man, just injuries galore. All right, so we're going to move on. We mentioned this guy last week. He may or may not be picked up in the league, so we thought we'd mention him again, and that would be one Saints running back, Kyrie Robinson. Mark Ingram, of course, has been sidelined with a broken hand. Robinson logged a season-high 18 carries for 69 yards Sunday in the Saints' victory over the Vikings. He didn't get that goal line carry we were hoping for at the beginning of the game. That went to Pierre Thomas, but again, his carries were increased. And when you can get a guy on this highly touted offense carrying the ball 18 times, even going to catch here and there, he's definitely worth a pickup as well.
Yeah. I personally wasn't hoping for Kyrie Robinson to get that goal line carry. I was more than thrilled for it to be for Pierre Thomas.
Well, and I will say they got the Cowboys this week, followed by the Buccaneers, so it's a pretty good schedule the next 2 weeks before their bye week.
Yeah, that's not bad up against the Cowboys and the Bucs. And the Bucs just had 56 points rung up on them. So yeah. Moving on, here's a guy most people actually wouldn't believe would be on waiver wires, and he may not be in your league, but if he is, you might want to grab him. D'Angelo Williams, expected to be back from a hamstring injury this week after seemingly being close to playing for the Panthers in Week 3 against Pittsburgh. Fantasy owners, you're obviously aware of this guy. He's got limitations. Jonathan Stewart, Mike Tolbert are both dinged up against the Steelers. Williams might actually get a few more carries than usual, which might actually make him a viable flex play. So if you need help, again, D'Angelo.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the only game in town. I'm pretty sure Stewart's looking like he's not going to play this week, and Tolbert's actually out with a hairline fracture in his leg. And if you've ever seen Mike Tolbert, his legs are the size of tree trunks, so how he could get a fracture in one of his leg bones, I have no idea. But D'Angelo, assuming he plays, so keep an eye out. Watch the news coming across the headlines for him, but if he plays, he will definitely be the game in town for that game this coming Sunday. So, and lastly, at the running back position, listen up, Arian Foster owners. Texans running back, or backup running back for that matter, Alfred Blue, he had to handle most of the rushing duties for the Texans on Sunday in the absence of Arian Foster, who came up lame with a hamstring injury. I tell you, this kind of came last minute. It caught a lot of us off guard. There was some speculation about this a little bit on Saturday if you were looking at Twitter and some deep sources, but he ended up not playing. So if you didn't have Alfred Blue, you were scrambling. He was decent. He rushed the ball 13 times for 78 yards. Most of that production came on a 46-yard run. He also had one reception for 10 yards. So I'm not sure that if I'm not an Arian Foster owner, I'm spending a lot of money on this guy. In fact, I'm not. But if you are an Arian Foster owner, you're definitely going to pick this guy up because he is the clear-cut handcuff for a very injury-prone Arian Foster.
Absolutely. Injury-prone is the word, apparently, and that's sad because I like Arian Foster. I like the way he runs the ball. Arian, come back. All right, moving on to the wide receivers. And first we're going to talk about the guy we did talk about last week, and if he's still on your waiver wire, go get him, Brian Quick. After catching 7 balls in each of his first 2 games, Quick had only 2 receptions against Dallas in Week 3, but one of them was a 51-yarder that went for his first touchdown of the season. Now, despite the lighter workload on Sunday, he is obviously the number 1 receiver in St. Louis. So if you need wide receiver depth or help at wide receiver, go get Brian Quick.
Yeah, considering he's coming up on bye, if you want to be savvy, if you're in a pretty savvy league, you might want to go ahead and grab him before the bye week to make sure you get him before other folks if he's actually still available. The next wide receiver we'll talk about is Jordan Matthews. The rookie caught a pair of touchdown passes in the Eagles' victory over the Redskins on Sunday and finished with 8 catches for 59 yards and, of course, those 2 touchdowns. So he definitely came through for his fantasy owners if anyone actually started the guy. In the first 2 games of the season, didn't do a whole lot at all. Macklin is definitely the guy there. But with Riley Cooper being, Riley Cooper, Jordan Matthews has kind of taken over the wide receiver 2 position in this offense, which is a very potent one coming from Chip Kelly. So definitely keep an eye on this guy. Moving forward, Macklin with his crickety knee could easily go down any given Sunday, and all of a sudden Jordan Matthews is going to blow up. So if you're needing some depth there, go ahead and pick him up.
Yeah, I like that guy a lot. I like watching the Eagles play. Actually, it's fun to watch. So moving on to a guy that's actually on 2 of my fantasy teams, Mr. Greg Jennings. Why he would be on waivers in anybody's league, I have no idea. But if he is, get him. Okay, Teddy Bridgewater's taking over for the injured Matt Castle. Jennings stands to benefit. He's a good match for Bridgewater with the intermediate passing range. He's not the super down the field burner like a Deshaun Jackson type guy. Adrian Peterson's gone. Rudolph's out. Look, Jennings is going to get a lot more targets than he has been in the past. If you remember when he played for Green Bay and got a lot of targets there, he was actually quite a good wide receiver. He was a wide receiver 1, if I'm not mistaken. So if for some unknown weird reason that Greg Jennings is on your waiver wire in your league, go get him.
Yeah, I definitely think he's probably going to be better in PPR leagues. I think he's going to be that bailout Teddy Bridgewater, since as you mentioned, he's more of a short to intermediate passer, so he could fill in very well. And Cordell Patterson just frankly isn't developing that quickly as we would hope as a wide receiver, that is, down the field, and they may take some time to get that chemistry going. So Greg Jennings is a pretty good pickup there. All right, so we're going to talk about next Andrew Hawkins and Miles Austin. So these guys, I mean, Hawkins, I tell you, he's PPR gold is what he is. The amount of he racked up 21 catches for 244 yards on 33 catches in his first 3 games. The guy's getting it done from that perspective. Miles Austin, you know, I tell you, when he's not nursing a hamstring, which he's not, at least at this moment in time, he's also been targeted 19 times for 14 catches and 115 yards with a touchdown in each of his first 2 games. So he's actually getting it done as well. Hawkins would probably be the guy that I would target for sure, especially in a PPR. Just have a little more faith in him getting the ball. But they are surprisingly getting it done there for Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, surprisingly is right. I mean, I liked Miles Austin going into the season a little bit, but again, he's got that hamstring issue that just pops up all the time. So, all right, moving on to the Raiders wide receiver James Jones. Get this guy's only owned in 50% of Yahoo leagues. He's become one of the favorite targets of rookie Derek Carr, and he figures to strengthen his grasp on that role now that Rod Streeter will be out for a while with a broken foot. So if you're in a Yahoo league, you got a 50% chance of being able to go get James Jones, and he has looked pretty damn good thus far this season.
Yeah, he struggled a little bit last week, but they were playing the Patriots, and I think he was on a Revis Island there for a bit. But the previous games, he'd pretty much killed it, so definitely worth a look there. All right, moving on to tight ends, and how could we not start with Travis Kelce? We've been talking about this guy, it seems like every week, even prior to the fantasy season beginning. Man, last week, you know, he had week 3 a 20-yard TD catch, which really made his day for fantasy. But I tell you, it was one heck of a catch and run. If you were able to actually watch this, he caught it, ran around some guys, he dove for the pylon, got the touchdown. So if you're one of the Pitta owners or Rudolph owners that need some help here in the short term, and if there's some reason he's still on the waiver wire, go ahead and definitely snag him up. You know, hopefully Andy Reid will see what the entire fantasy community is seeing, that Kelce is clearly the best pass catcher on your team. So get him the ball, get him some more targets, and this guy is really looking like he's about to break out.
Yeah, we've both been preaching Kelce since the preseason, and he's going to break out. That is a stone cold lock right now. Damn it. Moving on to another guy that I am starting to have a little faith in, Mr. Larry Donnell. And now this week was his least productive week so far. He still managed to haul in 6 passes for 45 yards, which you will take all day long from a guy named Larry Donnell. You know, Eli just can't quit Larry Donnell. And they are playing the Redskins next, so I think they're going to get a lot of points. At least Larry will. Yeah,
well, I wouldn't quit Larry either, playing the Redskins secondary and the Falcons secondary and the Eagles secondary. That's a pretty juicy matchup there for a tight end or any pass catcher for that matter. So, all right, moving on. Jay, what do you do with Ladarius Green? I mean, just when people are writing off this young guy, he posts 4 catches for 64 yards. Of course, he outproduced teammate Antonio Gates in Sunday's win over the Bills. But, you know, it's just hard to know what to do with this guy. I mean, Antonio Gates crushed it the first 2 weeks. You know, everyone had him on his bench because they didn't trust him and they drafted him as a backup. They probably were starting Ladarius or some other tight end, and then they just get the stones to put Antonio in their lineup, and he catches like one ball for 16 yards or something. Ladarius catches 4 balls for 64 yards. So honestly, I'm frankly staying away from this situation altogether until something pans out. There's a lot better options that we've just gone over with you on the waiver wire. So if you happen to be an Antonio Gates owner, and you can manage to sell him, I probably would. It might be a little tougher this week than it was last week, but I think I'm out of the Chargers tight end business.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be going anywhere near either of them. As a matter of fact, you mentioned the better options. I have one right here. His name is Owen Daniels. Dennis Pitta, obviously, we talked about this earlier. He dislocated his hip. So that puts Owen as the number 1 tight end option for Joe Flacco and the Ravens, and it could be a potentially lucrative role. Given that Joe Flacco has targeted his tight end an average of 134 times per season over the past 3 years. Daniels was quiet in week 3, but he did have a pair of touchdown catches in week 2. Like we said, he's older, might not be able to be out there for as many snaps, but the snaps that he's out there for, I'm going to go ahead and guess that he's going to be productive. Now, they do have the Panthers and the Colts coming up the next 2 weeks. Both of those defenses put on pretty decent shows this past week, or a couple weeks anyway, the Panthers. But yeah, Owen Daniels could definitely be a good guy to grab. He's a veteran. He's somebody you can probably count on for 10, 11 points a week.
Yeah. Yeah, we really need to mention the Colts tight ends, Dwayne Allen and Coby Fleener here. We're going a little deeper. Allen has caught a TD pass in 2 of his 3 games and seems to kind of be the steadier option here over Fleener, who has a bad habit of dropping catchable balls right to his chest, as was the case against the Jaguars on Sunday, when Fleener should have had 2 touchdown catches but had to settle for 1 after, frankly, showing the hands of Brandon Pettigrew.
Be nice to Pettigrew. He hasn't been that bad this season. At least he's not dropping balls like crazy.
This is just tough because there's 2 decent options here. Fleener was the guy who went to college with Andrew Luck. They have a connection on that level. Dwayne Allen seems to be the better option, but they're 2 capable guys. You really just don't know which one to stick with in any given week. And if one of them were to go down, you'd really have something, but it's a little tough trying to pick and choose between these guys each and every week.
Yeah, those are the exact situations I like to stay away from. It's just those are the kind of things that are gonna cause a heart attack in fantasy football players trying to play the right guy every week. It doesn't work out very well. So moving on to the Redskins tight end Niles Paul. Honestly, I think we would probably say this guy would be higher on people's priority list, but Jordan Reed is coming back from a hamstring injury soon. Paul has had 18 catches, 253 yards, and a touchdown, and might still be able to offer some nice help once the snaps are reduced, but I wouldn't count on it. So unless you're really, really desperate, I would go elsewhere. But if you are really desperate, Niles Paul might be somebody for you for at least another week or so. Rob?
Well, Jay, I will say hot off the presses here that Jordan Reed has been declared out for the short week here, playing Thursday against the Giants, so he's definitely out. So if you do need just to fill in for 1 week here, there's a good chance that Reed will come back following this week. But Niles Paul, as you said, has clearly been getting it done in the absence of Reed, and he will be again absent this week. So feel free to pick him up and start him at will. All right, Jason, we're going to move on. That's it for the waiver wire pickups at all the positions of note, and we will move ahead. And let's go over the games like we do every week. We just like to run through these quickly and just talk about the fantasy relevant players, who's doing well, who's doing bad, and so forth. So, Jay, I think we're going to get started here, and you're going to kick it off with last Thursday's game, which was a routing of the Buccaneers by the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, and routing is putting it gently, 56-14. I mean, good God. So, look, Josh McCown sucked. He's awful. He's terrible. Lovie Smith, I know you're a loyal guy, and I know you coach Josh up in there in Chicago. Oh, yeah, Chicago. But Mike Glennon is a better quarterback. Mike Glennon, 17-24, 121 yards, and a touchdown. Bobby Rainey, 11 carries, 41 yards. Not too great on the yards per carry, but he did have 7 catches for 64 yards, so he did save himself, especially in PPR leagues. Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson. Vincent Jackson did get a touchdown. He had 2 catches for 15 yards and a touchdown, so that saved his day. Mike Evans only had 4 catches for 52 yards. Moving over to the other side of the ball, Matt Ryan, 21-24, 286 yards and 3 touchdowns. So T.J. Yates got a little time. That's kind of funny. Anyway, Steven Jackson had 14 carries for 54 yards and a touchdown. Devin Hester, 1 carry for 20 yards, but a touchdown. Julio Jones. Man, Julio Jones. 9 catches, 161 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 11 targets. That is more than double the amount of targets than anybody else on the team had. The only other touchdown was by Harry Douglas, but I do believe he got hurt and was taken off the field, so don't be looking for help from him. I do want to say one thing. Devonta Freeman, 11 carries for 12 yards. Really, Devonta? Really? So glad I fucking dropped you. Anyway, that's all I got for Atlanta. Rob?
Yeah, backfield's a mess, and I will say what was nice about the Rainey situation is even after fumbling a second time, they let him come back in the game, and he actually salvaged his fantasy value, especially in a PPR. So they had the faith in him to bring him back. Doug Martin is coming back soon. Hard to know how that's going to pan out. And Julio, man, Roddy White was of course out in this one, was kind of a late scratch, so that definitely aided his numbers for the day. All right, so we're going to move on to what had to have been the game of the week, the rematch of last year's Super Bowl. My Denver Broncos losing yet again, and a closer one, mind you, to the Seahawks, 20-26 in overtime. It's frustrating as a Denver fan. It was nice to see them, make a serious game out of this one. They just kind of seemed to be a Jekyll and Hyde sort of offense and defense for that matter. But Peyton did what Peyton does. He went 31 for 49 for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. So he definitely did his job. There was, of course, a drive there at the end of the regulation where he went all the way down the field, threw a touchdown pass, and then went for 2 and converted to get him into that overtime situation. Unfortunately for the Broncos and the fans, we lost the coin toss, and our defense, our revamped defense, couldn't stop Seattle from driving down the field and scoring. So that was a little frustrating, but it was good to see them perform very well in probably one of the most hostile environments in the NFL. So from a rushing perspective, Monte, but it's a struggle to rush against Seattle, especially in Seattle. So Monte Ball had 14 carries for 38 yards. That's only 2.7 yards per carry. So not great, but you can't really hold that against him given the environment.
Disappointing.
Yeah, for sure. Receiving-wise, Emmanuel Sanders, man, he's just getting it done. I mean, he's the most targeted wide receiver on the team. He's got the most catches on the team, and in this one he was targeted 15 times, had 11 catches for 149 yards. Now he's not getting in the end zone, but you really frankly don't need that when you're catching 11 balls for 149 yards. That would simply be gravy. Wes Welker also came back in this one, his debut from ingesting something he probably shouldn't have. He was targeted 9 times, had 6 catches for 60 yards. And Demarius, man, get your shit together. Jeez, oh Pete. He was also targeted 9 times, but he's dropping the ball like he was 2 weeks ago. He only had 4 catches for 31 yards. It did come out after the game for you Demaryius Thomas owners out there, of which I clearly am, if you can tell by my frustrated voice, that he's dealing with some sort of lower leg foot ailment that they're not really talking much about. So it's probably not going to hurt him from playing, and they're on bye week this week, so hopefully he gets that cleared up and gets his shit together because he's killing us out there. He's killing us. On the Seattle side of the ball, Russell Wilson, man, he's looking good. He's looking like a top 10 quarterback, both NFL and fantasy-wise. He was 24 for 34, 260 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Did well. And Marshawn Lynch clearly hasn't left beast mode because he's carrying the ball 26 times for 88 yards and, oh, by the way, a score, not to mention the game-winning score when he's catching balls out of the backfield. Since when does that happen? 3 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown? I mean, damn.
He's eating his Skittles, Rob.
Yeah, you're going to make a Skittle in his likeness for sure here soon. So, sadly, again, they lost, and that's it for the Broncos Seahawks.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. I know how it feels to have your team lose as I'm a Lions fan.
Fair enough.
Often. So, moving on here to San Diego and Buffalo. All right, San Diego pulled this one out 22-10. Phillip Rivers, who I picked up in our league last week, 18-25, 256 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pretty good day. Donald Brown, as we mentioned earlier, 31 carries, 62 yards, no touchdowns. He did add 5 catches for 27 yards. I guess the guy to have in this game as far as fantasy points would have been concerned besides Phillip Rivers would have been Eddie Royal. 4 catches, 42 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Malcolm Floyd did get 2 catches for 98 yards. That's not terrible. Targeted 4 times. So moving on to Buffalo side, the often awful E.J. Manuel, 23 of 39, 238 yards and a touchdown, wasn't too bad today. Or Sunday, rather. Fred Jackson, 6 carries for 34 yards. C.J. Spiller, 10 carries for 25 yards. C.J. Spiller continues to have a low yards per carry. C.J. Spiller did add 3 catches for 37 yards. Fred Jackson, on the other hand, 8 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown, ladies and gentlemen. He killed it. Absolutely killed it. Scott Chandler, the tight end down there, caught 5 catches for 74 yards. And that is about it for fantasy-relevant performances in Buffalo.
All right, yeah, nice to see Freddie Jackson doing what Freddie does. Man, Spiller, just another frustrating player like he was last year. All right, so Jay, this just in. The Cowboys are over 500. Yes, you heard me correctly. They are 2-1, beating the Rams 34-31 in a comeback victory. Holy crap!
They had to come back against the Rams.
They did because they're still the Cowboys at the end of the day. Tony Romo, looked a little bit better in this one, aging back and all, 18 for 23, 217, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and one of those touchdowns was to a wide open Dez Bryant. Got behind the defense and is there just like cutting his toenails back there waiting for the ball to come down.
Thank you, Dez. Thank you, Dez.
Yeah, it was ridiculous how wide open Dez Bryant was. It clearly was. He was targeted 7 times, caught 6 of them for 89 yards, and the score looks like he's going to be a very consistent player, even if no one else is, because, well, Jason Witten is pretty much droppable, frankly. Targeted 5 times, 4 catches for 49 yards, and that may have been his probably best day of the week season thus far. So nobody else was even relevant on the pass catching side of the ball for Dallas. DeMarco Murray, man, he's crushing it, man. I mean, him and Le'Veon Bell are just killing it for fantasy this year. So if you waited, you got to pick at the end of round 1. You grabbed him at the beginning of round 2, whatever. Man, you lucked out. You really did, because DeMarco Murray, 24 carries for 100 yards and a score. Also had 4 catches for 31. The guy is just money in the bank.
Yeah, I should have kept him in the 3rd round, huh?
Yeah, clearly. St. Louis side of the ball, Austin Davis. Yeah, Austin Davis is who their quarterback is right now. Till Hill gets back, which maybe he won't, because Austin Davis went 30 for 42 for 327 yards and 3 touchdowns.
What?
Yes, he had 2 interceptions, but when you have 3 touchdowns for 327 yards, who cares? A couple picks here and there. The guy's killing it out there. He's killing it. So, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those guys, you wouldn't want to start him unless you're in a deep league, but he's getting it done, man. Zach Stacy. Now, Zach Stacy, St. Louis was up in this game big early. Zach Stacy is the clear-cut guy to just run the crap out of the ball. Last week we finally saw him take the carry load over Benny Cunningham, but now we have another Cunningham sighting. Cunningham had 9 carries for 29 yards. Zach Stacy only had 12 for 67. So Zach Stacy did outperform him on a yards per carry basis. But, man, this still thought the split was over, but it's back. And there was a Kenny Britt sighting. Again, we hate you, Kenny Britt. You're dead to us.
Go to hell, Kenny Britt.
But he had 1 catch he had 1 carry for a whopping 2 yards, and he had 5 catches for 69 yards. So it was by far his best outing from
years.
Probably in years. Jared Cook, the tight end there, had 7 catches for 75 yards, so he was decent for you if you started him or played him in a daily league. But that's about it. Again, I'm just going to say it again for posterity's sake. The Cowboys are 2-1.
I'm looking at it and I just don't believe it. I think ESPN's playing a late April Fool's joke, perhaps. Whatever. But moving on to a game. Really close game this week. Washington versus Philly. And this was won by the Eagles 37-34. But let's talk about Kirk Cousins. 30 of 48 for 27. 3 touchdowns and only 1 pick. Great game for that guy, man. He killed it. Absolutely killed it. I think that we may very well have seen the last of RG3 in Washington, to be honest with you. So,
Jay, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there. I think RG3 will be on another team next season. You heard it here first, folks.
I agree with you. So Alfred Morris, 23 carries, 77 yards. No catches at all, which is not a surprise out of Alfred Morris. He's been a little bit disappointing thus far this year. He had, one good week so far, I guess. Kirk Cousins actually rushed the ball 3 times for 5 yards. Also, Roy Halou got the goal line carry and the touchdown. Alfred Morris owners, you can go ahead and collectively swear. We'll wait. Okay. My man, my guy, in all 3 of my leagues, Mr. Pierre Garçon. 11 catches, 138 yards, and a touchdown. Thank you. Deshaun Jackson, not to be outdone. 5 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Good week, for these guys, fantasy-wise. Bummer for the Redskins that they ended up losing because they did put up some numbers. Nick Foles, though, also put up some numbers, 27 of 41 for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. LaShawn McCoy, 19 carries for 22 yards. What the fuck? That's crazy.
What the fuck is right? I lost in the league because of you, McCoy.
Dude, that's insane right there. Jeremy Maclin, as long as he remains healthy, Maclin is one of the guys to have 8 catches, 154 yards, and a touchdown. That's 19.3 yards per catch, folks. As we said earlier, Matthews, 8 catches for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pretty good week for the receiving core and the quarterback. Not a great week for the running backs. By the way, both Sproles and McCoy fumbled in this game. Not a great day for the Eagles running backs, but the Eagles still won, so I guess they don't really care. Rob?
Yeah, and there was quite the brawl in this one, so feel free to YouTube that. It was quite something. You don't see one of those every week. All right, so we're going to move on to the Texans getting thrashed by the Giants, another shocking event. Not that the Texans are great per se, but it is the Giants after all. But they won 30-17. They're finally getting this pass game coming around for the Giants. Eli Manning was 21 for 28, which, if you're following at home, that means he completed quite a few of his pass attempts, which is not necessarily like Eli for the past year and a half.
How many interceptions did he throw, Rob?
Shockingly, 0. Shockingly, what? 0. Yes. And he had 2 touchdown passes. So just when you might want to think of
immediately.
Yeah. Just when you might think about wanting to trust him, he'll probably go 11 for 27 for 109 yards and 4 interceptions next week. But anyway, we're going to stay in the present. He was passing to Victor Cruz again, finally. On 6 targets, Victor Cruz caught 5 of them, which means he may have only dropped 1 this week, which is a bonus for Victor Cruz. But he had 107 yards for a touchdown. Sadly, he was probably on everyone's bench because you really couldn't trust him, quite frankly. Who was targeted the most, you might ask, in this Giants receiving core, and that would have been Ruben Throw Me the Ball Randall. 10 targets, caught 5 of them, but for 27 yards and no touchdowns, so he really didn't produce all that much. But Eli is clearly looking for him, as he is Mr. Larry Donnell. 6 targets this week. He caught all 6 of them because that's what Larry Big Hands Donnell does, catches the ball. Listen up, Demaryius Thomas. Caught all 6 of his targets for 45 yards. He is getting it done. You know who's also getting it done? That would be Rashad Jennings. The guy is a freaking beast. If you got this guy, if you got him in the 2nd or 3rd round, as I did in 2 of my leagues, you're killing it. You're killing it. 34 carries for 176 yards, and he gets in the end zone this week. The guy is getting it done. Start him often. Start him this week against the Redskins. You know, they actually have a pretty good rush defense on Thursday. This guy is in your lineup early, often, and always. On the Houston side of the ball, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 20 for 34 for 289 in the score, but he did have 3 interceptions. And again, as we mentioned earlier, Arian Foster was a late scratch on this one, as he routinely is with hamstring issues or any plethora of lower leg anomalies, injuries, issues, whatever. Alfred Blue, you're my boy, Blue. Been waiting all year to say that, Jay. He had 13 carries for 78 yards, an average of 6 yards per carry for those following at home. Doing well, did pretty good in his debut there. Jonathan Grimes, not so much. 1 carry for 5 yards, so Alfred is definitely the handcuff there if you were looking to handcuff your quote-unquote stud wide receiver, or running back, that is. So on the receiving side of the ball, Hopkins is, man, he's still getting it done. Targeted 9 times, 6 catches for 116 yards. He was second in the target department to who you would expect, Andre Johnson, but out of the 11 targets, Andre Johnson only caught 4 of them for a measly 24 yards. And he has yet to find the end zone because, as we said last week, he is clearly allergic to said end zone, Jay.
Yeah, he is, man. That guy, he does not get those touchdown catches. So, all right, well, let's move on. New Orleans Saints managed to not go 0-3. Yes, it's true. They beat the Vikings 20-9. Now in this one, as we said earlier, Matt Castle went out with a bunch of broken bones in his foot, but he was only 5 for 10 for 53 yards anyway. That is not great. Teddy Bridgewater came in, 12 for 20, 150 yards, didn't throw any touchdowns. Matt Asiata, 12 carries for 35 yards, added 3 catches for 36 yards. Greg Jennings, 5 catches for 70 yards. And Cordell, 4 for 61. Kyle Rudolph also got hurt, only had 3 catches for 27 yards. Jarrett McKinnon, man, you know, I thought this guy was going to be all right. It's seeming like he's not going to do great. Two carries for -1 yards and 2 catches for 9 yards. Obviously, they're going to stick with Asiata here. Moving on to the New Orleans side of the ball, Drew Brees, 27 to 35, 293 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kerry Robinson, 18 carries for 69 yards, but my boy, Pierre Thomas, 8 carries for 30 yards, and he got the touchdown. Thank you, Pierre. Thank you. Brandon Cooks, leading the way here, 8 catches for 74 yards. Jimmy Graham, 6 catches for 54 yards. But Josh Hill and Marquise Colston were the recipients of touchdowns this week. Hill had 2 catches for 48 yards and the touchdown, where Colston had 2 catches for 25 yards and the touchdown. And that is it for the Saints-Vikings. Rob?
Yeah, and I will say, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I looked at it earlier, that if you look at the snap counts for the wide receivers in New Orleans, Brandon Cooks is dominating, frankly. Not only is he getting targeted more, he's on the field more, which, of course, you can't be catching balls if you're not on the field. Take note, Marquise Colston, with your 5 targets and 2 catches. Cooks seems to be one of the most steady guys on that team, surprisingly, as a rookie, but, you know, it is like they say it is. All right, so we're going to move on to the Cincinnati Bengals romping of the Tennessee Titans 33-7, because that's what the Bengals do. They're one of the showcase teams for the AFC. They're going to be giving Denver probably all they can handle. AFC Championship game is what I would foresee here in the future. But Tennessee's doing what they do. They're losing, and they're 1-2. So from a passing perspective, Jake Locker's still in there, 17 for 34 for only 185 yards and 2 picks. Might not be in there that much longer if they had a better option, throwing 2 picks and 185 yards, but it is what it is for now. He's throwing the ball to Kendall Wright, mostly 10 targets, 5 catches for 44 yards. Delaney Walker was targeted 7 times, only caught 4 for 54. He's apparently droppable at this point. Really not much else from a Tennessee wide receiver perspective. On the rushing side of the ball, it was nice to see Bishop Sankey getting involved here. He may not be dead after all, Jay. Better a commodity here than Freeman is, clearly. He had 10 carries for 61 yards. That's 6.1 yards a carry. Sean Green also had 10 carries, but for 33 yards because, after all, he is Sean Green. 3.3 yards per carry. So there's a Bishop Sankey sighting, and he might be taking over this role a little slower than we had hoped, but it still might be happening. So if he's on your waiver wire in deeper leagues, you might want to start thinking about Bishop Sankey, except for you, Jay. Do not pick him up in Red Zone Warriors. All right, so on the Cincinnati side of the ball,
it might be too late.
Andy Dalton. What do you do with Andy Dalton? I mean, the guy's friggin' catching balls and running them in for touchdowns, diving for the pylon. I mean, what the hell's that all about? He was only 15 for 23.
The Red Rocket, baby.
Yeah, evidently. 169 yards, no touchdowns passing, that is, and 1 interception. But again, and if you guys saw this play, or look it up because it's ridiculous, how that corner or safety, whoever it was, Mohamed Sanu threw it back to Dalton. It should have been picked off and run to the house. Not only did he not pick it off like he should have, he didn't even tackle Dalton. He let him run around him and score. It was frankly embarrassing. The guy's probably getting his ass whooped and laughed at in the locker room on the Tennessee side. But anyway, moving on. From a rushing perspective, my guy, my man crush, Gio Bernard, the guy just gets it done. Just gets it done. 14 carries for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had a catch for 7 yards. Wasn't as big last week, not as many touches. Yards per carry wasn't quite as good as last week, but, he's still getting you 2 touchdowns. He's getting a shit ton of touches and getting it done for his fantasy owners. This is looking to be a top 10 running back for sure in PPR leagues. And A.J. Green, he manned up. He played this game, played lame, still targeted 9 times, caught 6 of them for 102 yards. He came through. It was nice to see him play hurt and play well. And that's it for Cincinnati, Tennessee.
All right, well, moving on to what last week was the worst part of this podcast for me, but this week, sweet redemption. The Lions beat Green Bay 19-7. It wasn't pretty, but we beat Green Bay. Fuck you, Packers. Fuck you. So we'll talk about the Fudge Packers first. That would be Aaron Rodgers, 16 of 27, 162 yards and a touchdown. Boo. What's the matter, Aaron? You a little afraid of Ndamukong Suh or Nick Fairley or maybe Ziggy Ansah smushing you? Probably. So in this game, James Starks actually had the most yards, 8 carries for 38 yards. Eddie Lacy, a disappointing 11 carries for 36 yards. Jordy Nelson was even held in check here, which did disappoint me some because I do have him in our high-stakes league. 5 catches for 59 yards. Andrew Quarless, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, Aaron Rodgers has decided to start targeting a tight end again. 4 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown. Randall Cobb, 3 catches for 29 yards. Eddie Lacy added a catch for 9 yards. On to the winning side of the ball. Although Matt Stafford probably pissed off a lot of fantasy owners this week, and he didn't make Lions fans very happy. 22 of 34 for 246 yards. No touchdowns. 2 fucking interceptions. Stafford, get your shit together, dude. Please. Please. Rushing, Reggie Bush, 12 carries, 61 yards and a touchdown. Joique Bell, 15 carries for 33 yards. Not great there. Theo Riddick jumped in there for 3 carries for 16 yards. Calvin Johnson, well, he did Calvin Johnson things, just not to the normal extent. 6 catches for 82 yards. That was on 10 targets. Missed 4 balls. Not great. Not great. Other than that, Golden Tate, 5 catches for 51 yards. Reggie Bush did add 6 catches for 38 yards. And Jeremy Ross, 3 for 20 The tight ends were almost non-existent in this game. Joseph Foria only caught one ball for 3 yards, so not great. Oh, and Stafford also added a fumble to his turnover ratio. That's 3 turnovers for the fucking quarterback. Luckily, we still won. Dumb fucker. Get your shit together. Anyway, that's it for the Lions-Packers. Glad the Lions won. On to victory, boys.
Yeah, and I will say, because I'm a frustrated Eddie Lacy owner, that Mike McCarthy did call him out in the media, which Mike McCarthy rarely ever does. So hopefully that lights a fire under Lacy. He has had literally the 3 toughest rush defenses in the first 3 weeks, so it is frustrating. You expect your first-round pick to play above that and at least put up some decent numbers, and he's yet to do that. But I believe he has the 4th easiest schedule the rest of the way, so he is a buy low candidate. Everyone, go out and try to get him if you can, and if you're an Eddie Lacy owner, do not take any offers from any of the schmucks in your league because they're trying to take advantage of you, frankly. And we here at Red Zone Warriors will not let that happen. Swear to God.
Never.
All right. So we're going to move on to the Browns and the Ravens. You got to give it to the Browns, Jay. These guys they're hanging in there. They're 1-2, but they're losing at the very end of these games. I mean, it's just they're really hanging in there, playing better than probably anyone, including everyone, expected.
Yeah,
so
I can relate to that as a Lions fan, losing in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, man, they've got pride. If they got nothing else, they've got pride. So on the Baltimore side of the ball, Joe Flacco. Elite Joe Flacco, 19 for 31, 217, a touchdown and a pick. Not so great there. As we mentioned before, Lorenzo Taliaferro, 18 carries for 91 yards and a score. So again, that's one of the reasons we were talking about looking at him on the waiver wire, since Ray Rice is probably out beating something as we speak. And Forsett, 11 carries for 63 yards. They both had really high averages, well over 5 yards a carry. So they're both doing well. Looks like a committee situation there in Baltimore. Receiving-wise, Steve Smith has been the guy. He was targeted 7 times, caught 5 for 101 yards and 20.2 yards per catch. I mean, the guy's really getting it done down the field, which you wouldn't expect that from old man Steve Smith, who's 4'0", but he is. They tried to force the ball to Torrey Smith quite a bit. But he was targeted 8 times, only caught 2 of those because he drops a lot and does a lot of downfield try catches that he misses most of. So only caught 2 balls for 25 yards. Torrey Smith is droppable, people. I'm just going to say it. He's droppable, so drop him. With Dennis Pitta being out, I think Steve Smith's value gets boosted even more. Granted, there'll be more coverage on him, but the little guy just seems to push through his way and fight his way and punch someone in the face and get open somehow.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He's punching people in the dick. Bam! And then he runs right past them.
Yeah, between their legs. And anyway, so take a look at him if he happens to be on the waiver wire. On the Cleveland side of the ball, Brian Hoyer's, you got to say he's getting it done. I mean, he's playing well. 19 for 25, so very efficient day for him. Almost 300 yards. And a touchdown and no picks. They're not going to be in a rush to get in the overconfident money fingers anytime soon, as we all thought after the bye week. I really don't see this happening at this point. They're going to have to go on quite the losing spree, and Hoyer's going to have to be playing pretty bad for Manny Manziel to get in the game, I believe. On the rushing side of the ball, Terrence West had 12 carries for 36 yards. Not a great average there, 3 yards a carry, but he did get a touchdown. Isaiah Crowell had 11 carries for 55 yards. He definitely had a better yards per carry average and also got a score. But we'll see. Ben Tate's expected back. He may very well be back after the bye week, we would all assume, and we're not really sure how that situation is going to pan out when that's the case. On the Cleveland pass catcher side of the ball, Hawkins is targeted the most as he has been, 10 targets, caught 7 for 87 yards. Jordan Cameron finally came back from his injury, but was only targeted 3 times, only caught 1 ball for 23 yards. So hopefully after the bye week, he gets his shit together and becomes even a fraction of what he was last year, because right now he's frankly not playable because he's hurt and he's playing poorly when he's in there. So Miles Austin, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, caught 6 balls for 51 yards and a score, so he's surprisingly a little bit getting it done for Cleveland. Jay?
Yeah, well, go Browns, I guess, huh? Let's see what they can do. And I'm glad Manziel's sitting on his ass, to be honest with you. Anyway,
Yeah.
moving on to the Indianapolis-Jacksonville. Rob, can we even call this a game?
I don't know if we can call them a team, frankly.
Good God almighty. Well, let's hope Blake Bortles will help them out. But obviously, the way we're talking, Indianapolis won 44-17. Absolutely crushed them. Andrew Luck. Now, see, I want to say something here. Pep Hamilton must have listened to our podcast last week because the commish went on quite a little tirade about how he wasn't letting Andrew Luck do what Andrew Luck does. This week he did 31-39, 370 yards, 4 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Pep. But now I have a little bone to pick with you. Okay? Ahmad Bradshaw had 9 carries for 65 yards. Okay? Trent Richardson had 14 fucking carries for 57 yards. Okay? Bradshaw had 2 catches for 18 yards. That's an average of 9 yards per catch. Whereas Trent Richardson had 3 catches for 23 yards. That's an average of 7.7 yards per catch. Will you pull your head out of your ass, please, Pep? And just stop playing Richardson so fucking much. He sucks. He's not good. He had a good rookie season. Since then, he's been a big, fat disappointment for everybody. Ahmad Bradshaw, until he hurts his lame-ass feet, is the guy you should be handing the ball to. Anyway, we hop off my soapbox now. So, as I said, Bradshaw 9 for 65, had a couple catches. Trent Richardson 14 for 57. Andrew Luck rushed 3 times for 15 yards. T.Y. Hilton had 5 catches for 80 yards. Hakeem Nicks 4 for 50 and a touchdown. Kobe Fleener 4 for 49 and a touchdown. Dwayne Allen 4 for 43 and a touchdown. Bradshaw did get a touchdown catch, also something that Trent Richardson didn't have. So, Pep, stop fucking around. One other thing I will mention about Indianapolis here is their defense just killed it. They did a really good job fantasy-wise for me. They scored 20 points. They had 2 picks. They got a fumble. I believe one of those might have been a pick 6, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, on to the Jacksonville side of the ball. Blake Bortles, 14 of 24, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and he's out. Denard Robinson, 8 carries for 33 yards. Toby Gerhart, 9 carries for 32 yards. Bortles carried the ball twice for 30 yards. Cecil Shorts caught a touchdown this week. Hey, he's back. 5 catches for 35 yards and a touchdown. Allen Robinson led the team with 7 catches and 79 yards. Hearns had 1 catch for 63 yards and a touchdown.
Okay, wait, I'll get him in a minute.
Toby Gerhart, 2 catches for 31 yards. And Denard Robinson was targeted once and did not get a catch. Mike Brown, I believe his name is Mike. Yes, Mike Brown was the one who fumbled for Jacksonville. And that is all we got for that game. Rob, back to you.
Yes, for those of you who didn't hear what Jay said, please start your defenses against the Jaguars. If you heard nothing else, start your DSTs against the Jaguars. All right, so let's move on to a pathetic game where we won't spend much time because, again, it was pathetic. The Patriots, Jay, they're just not the Patriots of old. I think we just have to understand that and move forward as such because they faced the lowly Raiders and they only won 16-9 because neither team has a very good offense anymore for some reason, at least on the Patriots side, and their defenses aren't seemingly great. It's just horrible is what it is. And that makes me smile because I'm a Denver fan, and of course there are rivals here in the AFC, but they are not what they once were. Derek Carr, the rookie, you know, he's kind of getting it done a little bit. He's playing okay, you know, having to get in there, and with the injury, he's 21 for 34 for 174 yards, no touchdowns and interception, getting some work done on the ground for him. Rushing perspective, of course, MJD is still nursing whatever MJD nurses. So McFadden, you know, he's the guy. He gets 18 carries. He's so good when he's healthy. That's what everyone thinks. What? 3.3 yards a carry. Not so great. So even when McFadden has the opportunity, gets all the carries, he sucks. So again, folks, even though he's actually not hurt at the moment, man, if he's a desperation flex play is all we can say if MJD's out of the game. So Marcel Reese didn't do much better, 1 carries. Latavius Murray is probably the guy they should probably start looking at here long term because these 2 old guys ahead of him can't stay on the field and aren't really any good anymore. So we'll see what they do moving forward. James Jones, as we mentioned earlier, was blanketed and put himself on Revis Island. Only caught 3 balls for 43 yards, no touchdowns because, well, Oakland didn't score a touchdown. So that's kind of hard to score when that's the case. Rod Streeter, again, left the game, was injured. It's a big cluster F here for the Raiders per usual. Tom Brady is droppable, people. Yes, we said it. Feels weird to say it, but that's just the case. If you're in a 10 or 12-man league, he's not even startable, frankly. He's on your bench, and if you need someone for a waiver wire pickup on a bye week issue, you just drop him and do what you got to do because he's doing nothing for you. He was 24 for 37 for 234 yards and 1 score. He was only averaging 6.3 yards a throw, which is crap, frankly. Edelman is we keep saying this, him and Gronk are the only guys you can play. Gronk's still been on somewhat limited snaps. He did get a touchdown in this one to save his day because he was only 3 for 44 prior to that, so he's not exactly killing it. And in a game where you would assume Ridley would tear it up because they should have crushed the Raiders, and Ridley was coming off a very good week where he didn't fumble for once. He did have 19 carries, but only for 54 yards. That's less than 3 yards a carry. Shane Vereen was drafted in the 2nd round in PPR leagues, probably the 3rd round in standard leagues, and he's not getting it done, frankly. Who knows what's going on with his offense? You never can tell. He only had 7 carries for 20 yards, and he only had 4 catches for 17. So this guy is a sketchy play right now at best. He's a flex play, even in a PPR league, even though that's weird. Yeah, it's unfortunate because he was drafted so high. It's a weird situation there, and they're just not getting it done. So that's that's it for the horrible Raiders-Patriots game.
All right, well, we'll move on to a little more exciting of a game, although not that much more. San Francisco lost to Arizona 23-14. In this game, Colin Kaepernick, 29 of 37, 245 yards and a touchdown. No interceptions. Not terrible, not great. He also rushed 13 times for 54 yards. Carlos Hyde, 3 rushes for 13 yards and a touchdown. Frank Gore, 6 rushes for 10 yards. Not a great game for the rushing game, or day for the rushing game in San Francisco. Stevie Johnson, 9 catches, 103 yards. And Crabtree, Michael Crabtree, 10 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. Bolden, 6 for 36. Brandon Lloyd had a catch in this game, believe it or not, for 5 yards. Look at that. Apparently he set his attitude down long enough to catch a ball. Moving over to the Arizona side of the ball. Drew Stanton, again starting for the lame-shouldered Carson Palmer. 18 of 33, 244 yards and a touchdown. Hey, 2 touchdowns, excuse me. At least he didn't throw a pick. Andre Ellington, 18 carries, 62 yards. It's only 3.4 yards a carry. Kind of disappointing for Ellington owners there. Drew Stanton, 6 carries for 16 yards. Imagine that. Michael Floyd got his mojo back apparently. 5 catches for 114 yards. Larry Fitzgerald was held to only 3 catches for 34 yards. John Brown, 4 catches for 52 yards and 2 fucking touchdowns. Damn it. Andre Ellington did manage to add 3 catches for 13 yards. So, good day for Michael Floyd. Apparently good day for Mr. Brown there. But, not a good day for Larry Fitzgerald. That's it.
Yeah, the 49ers just aren't what they were the last couple years. I really think Arizona's going to meet Seattle in the NFC Championship game this year. The 49ers just can't get it done. Their defense isn't quite what it was. And I will say on Andre Ellington, again, I'm a partial guy on this because I own him in a couple leagues, but even with kind of a bum foot, he's still averaging 85 all-purpose yards over the first 3 games and adding catches on top of that, of course, in a PPR league. So he's still doing pretty well for you. And they are going on a bye this week, so hopefully he can get healthy and come out in the second half and get the even better production like we expected previously. So we'll see where that goes. All right, moving on to the Chiefs, who were refused to go 0-3. They beat the Dolphins 34-15. And again, without Jamal Charles, they played pretty well here. And if you can actually, if you want to see, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you want to see Andy Reid dance in the locker room, if that's what you want to call it, you can look that up on the internet. It's humbling to say nothing else. But
my asshole just puckered a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much. So Alex Smith did what Alex Smith does, 19 for 25, very efficient, pass for under 200, again, like he does. But he had 3 touchdown passes, so you will take that all day, and he gets a little bit done on the ground with 2 carries for 17 yards. You can always expect that from Alex Smith as well. Receiving-wise, shockingly, Dwayne Bowe, 3 catches for 32 yards. I don't even know where'd that come from. Well, it came from his past year and a half because he sucks. He just sucks. So drop him if you got him. It's not worth a bench spot. Man, it's embarrassing what that guy's become, but it is what it is. Joe McKnight, on the other hand, is a little kind of scat back. He had 6 catches for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns, which frankly pissed me off because I had Niall Davis in there, who wasn't involved at all in the receiving aspect of the game like he was the week prior. So rushing-wise, Niall Davis, he did get the start over Jamal Charles. He's still limp from the quasi high ankle component sprain or whatever the hell he's got. Might be back actually this coming week, so look for that. But he had 32 carries for 132 yards in the score, so you're definitely not going to bitch. He's definitely getting it done, and hopefully, man, when Jamal gets back, I don't know if it's going to be some sort of 60-40 split or what, but Niall Davis has definitely played his way into that backfield. That's a little bit scary for all the Jamal Charles, including myself, owners out there. So we mentioned before, Travis Kelce's getting it done. He was only targeted 4 times, but he made the most of it. 3 catches for 36 yards and a really, really nice leaping score, diving for the pylon. So he's looking very good. Hopefully he'll be getting the ball more early and often here in this offense. On the Miami side, it of course was bleak. Tannehill was 21 for 43 for 205 yards in the score. The reports are out of Miami that the coaching staff was actually meeting today, Tuesday, to determine if they were going to bench him for this upcoming week or not. So heads up for you guys streaming defenses. I don't think this is probably going to happen, but the coaching staff here, of course, is looking to keep their jobs. So we'll see. But if they do that, might be a good bet to find the defense playing Miami this week. Might be a good bet anyway, frankly, because Tannehill is not doing so hot. Lamar Miller did very well on this one, 15 carries for 108 yards. Daniel Thomas, of course, they brought him back in with all the injuries there. No Sean Marino and such. 2 carries for 15 yards. Hadn't had to carve himself out a big role yet, so we'll see if that moves forward or not. And receiving-wise, they're trying to force the ball to Mike Wallace. He's at 12 targets. I only had 5 catches, but he did have 75 yards. So he's still getting it done and playing a little bit better than people thought going into the season. And note to self or to the audience here, Jay, Mike Wallace actually is the highest paid wide receiver in the game this year, believe it or not, based on his contract. When I heard that, I was like, what? Mike Wallace? What? But he is, so they're force-feeding him the ball because he needs to earn a fraction of what he's getting paid. Back to you, Jay.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go not very far on a limb here and say he's probably not going to earn the highest paid receiver for the year. Just saying. So moving on to the Pittsburgh-Carolina game, and as I mentioned earlier, Carolina's defense is good, but in this one they were not. They lost 37-19. Ben Roethlisberger, 22 of 30, 196 yards and 2 touchdowns. Le'Veon Bell still killing it, 21 carries, 147 yards, two catches for 10 yards. LeGarrette Blount, not to be outdone, 10 carries for 118 yards and a touchdown. So great day for the running game in Pittsburgh. Carolina, that's surprising that they let that many yards through their line. And now on to Pittsburgh's receiving, and my boy, Antonio Brown. 10 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, just to say, that 10 catches was on 10 targets. Yes, he caught every ball thrown his way. That, Demaryius Thomas, is how it's fucking done. Heath Miller, 4 catches for 51 yards. Marcus Wheaton, 4 catches for 35 yards. Moving on to the Carolina side of the ball, Cam Newton with his sore ribs, 24 of 35 for 250 yards and a touchdown. He also had Mike Tolbert only had 3 carries for 4 yards and added 3 catches for 20. Stewart also had 3 catches for 19 yards. Calvin Benjamin, the rookie, showing up big time. 8 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. And the guy who I said and still maintain will be a top 5 tight end in this league, Greg Olsen, 5 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. That is it for the Carolina Pittsburgh game. Rob?
All right, so we'll wrap it up today with the final game, the Monday night game, and that was the Bears beating the Jets at the Jets 27-19.
Come on, Jets. I needed you to win.
Yeah, I knew you'd be disappointed in that one. You know, this was an interesting one. Jay Cutler, again, he did pretty well for his owners. Not great, but not horrible. 23 for 38, 225 yards. He did get 2 scores and no picks, surprisingly, in this one. You know, I tell you, the Jets, Eddie Lacy found this out when he played them. The Jets really just don't give up any yards on the ground. Matt Forte struggled big time, 13 for only 33 yards, and only an average of 2.5 yards a carry. They're no joke, the front 7 here in New York. Although he did have 6 catches for 43 yards, you can't expect that from Forte, so that helped salvage a little bit of his day. Hopefully that was enough to put your fantasy team over the top in that Monday night game. You know, Brandon Marshall had 1 catch in this game for 6 yards, and that's it. He was playing hurt with a bad ankle. He got hit, I believe, in the second quarter. Came out of the game, ended up coming back in the third and finished the game, but he was definitely limp and didn't play that well, and they weren't going to him at all. Alshon Jeffrey stepped in for him. Unfortunately for his owners, he didn't get any scores, although they were trying. They threw him several goal line attempts, red zone attempts. It just didn't happen for him. He did have 8 catches on 13 targets for 105 yards, though, so you'll take 18 points in a PPR from Alshon Jeffrey all day. On the New York side, Geno Smith, 26 for 43 for 316 yards and a touchdown. He did have 2 interceptions on the day. Chris Ivory ran really hard. He looked really good in this game, actually. 10 carries for 44 yards. Chris Johnson also had 10 carries, but only 34 yards. So Chris Ivory definitely outplayed him in this one. Chris Ivory also had a long run of 17 yards, which I believe Chris Johnson is actually supposed to do, but that's just not happening. On the receiving aspect, Eric Decker, he actually started this game. He was kind of a game-time decision, but his hamstring flared up on him. He only had 1 catch for 19 yards. So hello, Jeremy Curley. He was targeted a whopping 11 times from Geno Smith, caught 7 of those for 81 yards and a score. So if you were covering yourself because you had Eric Decker and you weren't sure about him, you decided to play him, he did well for you, no doubt about it. So we'll check Eric Decker's status this coming week. And that is it for the play-by-play here of Week 3 in the NFL, and that wraps it up for our...
I'd actually like to mention one thing real quick.
Uh-huh.
You missed out there on Chris Ivory's 4 catches for 52 yards. Also, what I thought Chris Johnson was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, very much. Chris Ivory is definitely the guy to have, it appears, in New York. All right, so that wraps it up for our podcast today. Definitely appreciate the downloads, appreciate you listening. On the next week's show, we'll be discussing Week 5 waiver wire grabs, along with helping you decide who to start and who to sit in the upcoming week. In the meantime, go to redzonewarriors.com, where you can watch previous episodes and see our rankings and subscribe to and rate our show via iTunes. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and tweet us all your fantasy football questions at RedZoneWarriors. So, for the Cushman, I am Rob, the Commish Smith, and we will definitely catch you next time.